series. You may not have been able to hear us, but you certainly saw the action that took place in the first few laps of this race. 2 cautions already coming out, 2 drivers already back in the garage area. Seth Cole and Scott Rankin joining you here tonight, and Craig Forsyth out in front, but just to kind of redocument everything that we saw there to give everybody an idea of what happened. The big story, of course, that first caution, Matt Wagner, second in the points, last week's runner-up in the season opener, done for the evening. 16th place is where he'll finish tonight.
Yeah, look, and I mean, there was a lot of banter back and forth, and we sort of said, look, I mean, the guy is so lovely. I mean, he's always there. He's always willing to go the extra mile to help out people, always willing to teach people, myself included. He's actually put a lot of time and effort into teaching me, and the only reason I'm at the level that I'm at is all thanks to Matt Wagner. But more than that, he cannot buy luck at the moment. I mean, last night it was a bit of gap whack in the Area 51 IR18 league with exactly the same driver, Craig Forsyth. And tonight, more gap whack. Gap whack strikes again. Lightning strikes twice, people. Don't ever think it won't. Don't run to the site of where lightning has struck once, because it is still likely to strike that same place again, and Matt Wagner is the proof.
And, of course, the second caution coming out involving Jimmy Drynan. He had some contact with Eric Schaus going into turn 1, and then collected up Gary Corley. Now, Corley is out of the race in the 14th position. Jimmy Drynan still sits on pit road, but obviously it was a talking point last week, and we were talking about it, but you guys couldn't hear us, but we were talking about the fact that there's no fast repairs for these drivers here tonight, so effectively Jimmy Drynan's day is done as well. So 16 drivers took the green flag to begin this thing, and right now only 13 remain, all 13 right now on the lead lap.
Yeah, really good pack up front here of 6 cars at the moment. Eric Schaus is still in the race. Ultimately, what that incident was caused by was Schaus was trying to get a run on Drynan on the bottom side of the track. Drynan was... I'm not going to say he wasn't holding a lane, because I don't think he was. I don't think that was the intent with the driving style that he was going. He was trying to leverage. Effectively, when you're attempting to make an overtake, the way this works is one of the 2 cars will have priority going into and going through the corners. What that lead car's responsibility is going to be to make it difficult to overtake. There are a few different ways to do that. Number 1, with Indy cars, it is actually cutting off the air. Giving them a fair bit of air wash makes the aero devices in the car not work quite as well as they could. Number 2, it's utilize all the track. Use all the space that you've got available. By starting up a little bit higher, you open the corner up. You've got a lot more room to make that corner. You can turn a little bit sharply initially, allows you to carry more speed through all the corner, rather than running on a narrow strip on the bottom of the racetrack. That's exactly what happened in this case, was that Jimmy Drynan pinched Schaus down to the bottom of the track. Schaus got a little bit unsettled, wasn't quite happy with being forced into this narrow mindset, the way things went. He wanted to get on with the show, he wanted to get on with things, he wanted to clear Jimmy Drynan, started to get a little bit more aggressive, let it happen for maybe 1-2 laps, and then he just sort of ran out of patience, and he needed to get by, and he thought it was a dangerous position that he was really in. He wanted to get up the track, get a little bit aggressive. He changed his tack. He wasn't keeping it to the bottom side of the track. He was trying to build a run, and he got a run, went to the outside. Drynan left the door open and then shut it at the exact last moment, which has caused Schaus to have an aggressive reaction. Ultimately, in this sort of a case, I think both drivers have certainly got a case to answer for, but Schaus will be the one that will be penalized for it. There are ways to prevent that incident from happening in both drivers' shoes. Drynan's defending his position, so therefore he wants to be as aggressive as he possibly can. I don't think any driver's really at fault. It's a racing deal. Schaus will get penalized for it, though.
Forsyth right now leading AJ Hobson. Luis Gonzalez Nunez, who had the podium finish last week at Auto Club, 3rd place in his Dark Horse Racing Series debut, right now holds the final spot of the podium as they run, and just behind him, the former champion and last week's winner from Auto Club, Nick DeGroot. Now, of course, Nick DeGroot going to have a little bit of breathing space at the moment. Last week at Auto Club, double points, so he had 24 points over Matt Wagner coming into this race. Craig Forsyth with a pit road miscue in last week's event, down there in the point stand. So if Nick DeGroot just kind of remains consistent here, he could have a pretty sizable points gap going into New Hampshire. But we know Nick DeGroot, when he gets to the closing stages, he's going to give us all and try and see if he can be a back-to-back winner in the first 2 races of the season.
Yeah, there's a couple of things actually about this drive from Nick DeGroot that are a little bit curious. One of the things I've had the experience with Nick DeGroot directly within the IR18 car in particular is De Groot's one of his biggest weaknesses is a very, very strong driver on pace, very, very strong driver in terms of tyre conservation. One of his biggest weaknesses, however, is the ability to fuel save. This drive that I'm seeing right here, though, this is a fuel-saving drive. Currently, we've got 6 cars in this lead pack. You got Charles Teed, you got Gale Brooks, they're just tucked in sort of behind him. If you keep your eye on Nick de Groot, he's not pressuring the guys that are ahead of him. He's probably bleeding out of the throttle. He's probably trying to conserve a little bit of fuel. So if he can save some fuel now, and critically, when you're racing at a little bit of a slower speed, you're not putting as much load through the tires. That saves tire. He's basically eyeing off the tail end of this run as the period when he makes the biggest gains.
And on board with Luis Gonzalez Nunez. Started this race from the 13th position, as you had documented back when we were having the audio issues, that he ended up not being able to get to the start-finish line to complete his second lap, so he had to start deep in traffic, has now worked his way up solidly inside of the top 3. One thing I'm wondering, though, is he's right now running the runner-up spot. We had Hobson in the runner-up spot not too long ago. The incident with Matt Wagner earlier on was gap whack between himself and Craig Forsyth, and we've seen a couple of times here during this run, the 27 blink in and out. Does that make any of these guys from second place on back maybe a little nervous, even if they do have a run to get up there and try and challenge Forsyth for the race lead, and the possible risk that they could suffer the same fate that Wagner did?
Yes and no. So this has been an ongoing issue for Craig Forsyth. This is just part and parcel of the internet that he lives with, and I believe we talked about it a lot in previous broadcasts. Look, in real life, you've got mechanical issues. You can have a drive shaft fail. You can have a shifter fail to locate on a gear, breaks the gearbox, race over, those sorts of things. So that's just part and parcel of that. You don't have cars that disappear and reappear. That is a big, big problem. However, internet is one of the few things that can simulate a failing car. If you have failing internet, nothing you can do. Your race is done. You're going to get disconnected from the server. That's how all that works. All of us in video game land, we're used to that. We know exactly what goes on with that. In Craig Forsyth's case, he blinks once, maybe every 20 or 30 laps. You don't know when that's going to be. You don't know how consistent that's going to be. Some nights it's a little bit more, some nights it's a little bit less. It's pretty consistent with Craig. It's only a minor connection issue. It's effectively his internet reinstating itself. It's checking the connection. A packet doesn't get through. He's off the track there for a few moments whilst it's reestablished. There's nothing major in it. iRacing, what it does do is it searches for an approximate location of the car at that point in time and tries to keep them in a relatively consistent sort of area. The one major issue is if you make high speed, high banking, heavy changes to the steering input. Unfortunately, what happens around Las Vegas? High speed, heavy steering input sometimes, that's what causes the incidents. Effectively what's going on within the iRacing system is it says, oh, there's a dramatic change here. We're actually not really certain of where the car is. We're going to fill a massive space with where we think the car might be. And that causes incidents. Matt Wagner's It's luck. There's nothing more to it. And look, I mean, to be perfectly honest, is there anything that you could really do about it? Nah, not really. You just logged that one in the books. It's disappointing. He got off to a strong start. At least it didn't happen in the double points round.
Good point there. Spiller on board with Charles Teed. He's in a pretty good battle with Eric Schaus for the 5th position. Nick de Groot holding off AJ Hobson just up ahead for 3rd place. Charles Teed and Nick de Groot, the 2 former champions in the series here this season. The other 2 former champions, Rick Raybon, of course, the outgoing champion, and the former champion, Robert Maleska III. They are not in the season, as we didn't see them last week at Auto Club, and we don't see them here tonight at Las Vegas. But interestingly enough, Las Vegas is only... Whoa, somebody... Is that Forsyth? It is, 27.
Yeah, so we've hit fuel window for Forsyth, so he's coming down. That's critical. What lap number are we at? 48. So that means 32 laps is the fuel stint window running in front with a caution period in the middle there. So he's saved a fraction. So I'm looking at 30 laps of probably full green flag running there for the fuel stint. They're a little bit short. That's 16 laps. That could be critical. And there goes the other car as well. So everything that I was just saying about Nick de Groot, like I said, he's focusing on pace at the back end of the stint. He's saved fuel. He's now in a really, really good position.
Nunez coming in from what was 2nd, then interim 1st, and turns the race lead over now to Nick de Groot in the 89. We'll see if de Groot's going to be waving the hand out the arrow screen there. Nope, he's actually going to stay out another lap, as is Charles Teed, Eric Schaus, Eric Peterson, and Gale Brooks. AJ Hobson made the dive onto pit lane from second place.
Yeah, so like I said, De Groot's actually gone for the fuel save strategy. Like I said, this is definitely one of his weaker aspects in terms of his racing, but he's managed to nail it tonight, and he's clearly seen a window that's opened up. This is effectively what you're trying to do when you're in this sort of a situation. It's actually one of the things. I'm quite good at saving fuel. I'm really, really poor at doing the math on when you need to pit whilst I'm in the car. When I'm sitting here, it's a lot easier. You've got a lot more data to time to sit down and look at it. What you're trying to do, you take your end of the race, and then you work backwards from there. You go, alright, what's my critical lap numbers for all of my stops here? My critical lap numbers tonight, if we're working in terms of a 30-lap run, is 90, 60, 30. Anytime that I can push myself into one of those zones, now, with a little bit of fuel saving, you can extend that. Each stop, let's say, right now we're adding a fair few laps. You've got to remember here that De Groot actually stopped on lap 17, and a lot of the other guys stopped on lap 9. So they've got about another 8 laps here. So this is going to push Nick De Groot right in and against his fuel window. He has to make one less green flag stop. He's in a really good race position.
I was going to mention just before Forsyth hit pit road that this is only the second time that these drivers have taken to Las Vegas in this series. The first time was back in Season 3, where the eventual champion of that season, Robert Maleska III, went to victory lane. But we see Nick De Groot come to pit road now, along with Eric Schaus and company. I want to pick your brain on something that I noticed when we were riding on board with Charles Teed, who now inherits the top position. Oh, we got a caution, actually, so we'll get to the question in a moment. I believe the 49 of Jari Brupacher has had an issue off of turn 4.
Yeah, that's Jari. Yeah, that's interesting. So we'll see how that goes. So I have no idea what's happened there.
It's right in the middle of green flag pit stops too, and the last thing you want to see, if you're one of those early pitters, is a yellow flag coming out.
Yeah, you want this pit cycle to complete itself. Right now, there's going to be effectively 4 cars that are a lap down, and that's from Jari, included in that incident, from Craig Forsyth, Nunez, and Hobson. All those guys were the 3 guys that stayed out under the last caution. They pitted. Now, critically, there's a couple of things that are going to happen here. De Groot, Schaus, they actually got out in front of the leaders as well. They were in that middle of that pit cycle. They're going to maintain their lap. Critically for these guys, T, Gale Brooks, they're going to maintain the lead of this race. They're going to be able to pit and potentially come back out in front of the field. Depends how quickly Nick De Groot gets around here, but he's going to have to burn a little bit more fuel. So he's going to be fuel compromised, whether or not he wants to cycle back through. That's a choice. He'll probably opt for track position at this point in time. Now, the wave around happens. This is the difference, isn't it? It happens the lap that Nick De Groot comes to pit lane. He gets to reassume the race lead. The guys that have already pitted are going to get a wave around. They're going to cycle to the tail end of the field after they've done their pit stop. So there's no benefit for these guys.
Saw on board of Jeff Heisong in the 18, it almost kind of looked like Jari Brupacher was not aware the car in front of him was coming to pit lane and got on the brakes, slowed it down so much that Heisong wasn't aware that was going on, ran into the back of Brupacher, and that brought out the incident. So a lot of front-end damage sustained by Jeff Heisong as well, and it looks like it may be terminal. I believe they've actually pushed that machine back into the garage area.
It was a heavy hit front on. It wasn't just front on hit as well. It was a little bit of side pod damage, potentially some engine damage there as well, which means he's going to be slow. Yeah, Yari's missed his pit lane entry. That is completely and utterly on Jari. I was actually listening to the in-game comms. Normally what happens in races like these, particularly the higher speed circuits, is the drivers will warn each other when they're actually coming to pit road. What that's designed to do is it makes the cars in behind them switch out to the higher side. Now, normally what would happen in a race like this in real life is that your spotter up in the spotting tower, he'd go to all the cars that are in and around him and say, hey, we're looking to come to pit lane on this lap. Make sure that your driver's aware there's going to be a couple drivers that are going to be pitting in and around right now. But again, towards the tail end of that fuel stint, you're generally aware that, oh, look, I've saved a little bit more fuel. I'm going to be running 3 and 4 a little bit more to the higher side to make sure that I can react. In that case, Yari's missed pit lane. He's trying to get the car slowed down and to the bottom of the racetrack at the same time. Tires, they only have so much grip. They effectively, if you've say got, let's talk in percentages of grip, you've got 100%, 100 points worth of grip. If you're putting 50% of that grip into braking, well, you can't exceed that 100 points of grip, so you're kind of limited. You can't turn the car. Yeah, and that's what's happened there. He's drifted up the track.
That caution, very timely for two drivers in particular. They were on pit lane when the yellow flag came out and were able to stay on the lead lap while completing their service on pit lane. Nick DeGroot, Eric Schaus, they're going to be the top two. When we go back green, Gale Brooks actually won the battle off pit road, so he's going to restart in third. T2 was the leader coming down pit lane. He's going to be fourth, and Jim Brooks is going to line up in the fifth position. You see all those drivers ahead of Nick DeGroot waiting for the opportunity when the lights go out atop the pace car to take the wave around. Luis Gonzalez Nunez, AJ Hobson, and Eric Peterson amongst those. Looks like TJ Elaine, he spent a pretty long time on pit road. He is going to remain one lap down, it would appear, and Jari Brubacher on pit lane has now returned to the racetrack, albeit 3 laps down. Correction on my part, too. I said Jeff Heisong was out of the race. His name grayed out for a brief moment there on my telemetry, but then reappeared. He's still on the lead lap, still running. He'll be restarting in 7th place, but before we go back green, I want to ask you the question I was going to ask you before we had that yellow flag come out. When we looked with Charles Teed, he was running in 5th gear, and I would assume if you wanted to, at a track like this, be in fuel conservation mode, you'd want to go to the highest gear of 6th, like a draft gear. Why would you stay in 5th gear? I mean, would you still be able to save fuel?
Well, I tell you what, rather than having me answer that, and I'm not really the expert on this car, we've actually got, unfortunately, the first retirement from the race in the room, Matt Wagner. Obviously not the best of circumstances to bring you into the commentary box here this evening, but great opportunity to talk about fuel and tire strategy. So I know you're an expert at this sort of stuff here tonight. Seth and I were just discussing 5th gear, 6th gear. What's the reasons for both? Why would you try and run in either gear?
Well, if you really want to pass somebody, 5th gear would be your option, but it's 6th gear in these cars as I practiced here. Not very many laps in the race, but 6th gear would probably be your option here. So we're looking about 34 laps to a fuel run here. I say about maximum. If I was in Eric Schauser's shoes, I'd probably run 6th gear the whole time and just ride around Nick there, and hopefully we can get around him.
We're talking at the start of the broadcast as well about the need to conserve tires. I think, are we going green this time? I believe we are.
Yes, we are indeed.
We're going back to green at this point in time. In order to save tires, like normally the fastest way around the racetrack is to be all the way down on the bottom side of the racetrack. That's good, but that's going to burn up a little bit of that right front.
Yeah, it's only if you're in clean air. The exception, if you're in a car like Eric Schauser, he is running second right behind Nick, you are going to burn up that right front tire and right rear tire like hell a lot more than the leader is.
All right, thank you for the insight, Matt. And the only other thing to really cover, 2 nights in a row, this racetrack, it's not been a kind mistress to you, unfortunately. And Craig Forsyth is the bringer of Blinky Mayhem, I guess is probably the best way to say, or Gap Whack.
Yeah, well, you want to talk about the first race of the season here at California last week too. He spun on right in front of me on on pit road there, and it cost me a couple of seconds to race with Nick for the win. And we've got some issues we need to sort out. So hopefully next race we won't go get some. We don't fight bad luck because it's on our side right now. We need to get that monkey off our back.
Now, a critical social question for me. Are you, well, I say social, I just mean, this is friendly banter. Are you participating in the Daytona 24 this weekend?
Yes, I am.
Sick. Who are you running with?
You are seeing one of my teammates in here, Gael, is actually a winner of the Roar before the 24. And he will be one of my partners this coming weekend. And so is Eric Schaus.
And more importantly, he's only able to participate tonight because he didn't do a shoey after the win at the Raw, yeah?
Oh, no shoey for Gael.
Thanks for all the insights, Matt. It's unfortunate to see you down here. And one thing I did say to Seth was that at least it happened during a single points round. It wasn't the double points season opener last week at Auto Club.
Yes, Seth, I do agree. Guys, I know you guys are doing a great job in your commentary. I listen to you guys. You guys do a phenomenal job. Scott and Seth, you guys are a great combo up in the booth. Thanks for bringing me in. You guys are great. Love you guys.
Yeah, can I get a testimonial written up for my website? That'd be awesome. Thanks, Matt. Thank you for your time, brother.
Yes, sir. You all have a great night.
It's interesting that you bring up websites there, Scott. I actually, today, took the opportunity to go on to darkhorseracingseries.com. They've actually got a really good website there, a lot of information about the races, the past races, the current standings, a lot of the drivers as well, both current and former on there. And next week, thanks to the information of the website, going to be having Matt Wagner go to, I guess it'd probably be considered a home track here on the schedule, out of Toms River, New Jersey. Going to be heading to New Hampshire Motor Speedway next week.
Yeah, quite a strong performing track. Wagner's he's consistent in a lot of places, but his favorite track of the season is always either Gateway or the Motegi Oval over in Japan. He loves both of those styles of track, very, very similar. So, look, I mean, hopefully, fingers crossed for him, being the hometown boy, it'll be time to get his season back on track and back underway. And look, I don't think he's going to be handed a victory by any stretch of the imagination. He'll have to go out there and earn it. But look, I mean, when the racetrack's closer, you can go down and check it for the bumps, I suppose. It's about the only other thing you can do.
Now, there's a car in this league pack that is not battling for positions. The fifth car in line there, that's TJ Elaine, who is right now the only car one lap down. The way that the cars lined up on the restart, the lap down machines were integrated with the lead lap cars, and so the 95 started up close to the front of the field, and he's doing a pretty good job holding his position, giving the space to the race leaders, but obviously a driver that wouldn't mind seeing a yellow flag. And I'll tell you what, with what we're seeing out of him right now, if a caution came out, he got back in the lead lap, and he was up inside the top 5 late in this race. This might be a guy that might have something for the race win.
Yeah, look, there's normally when you're in this sort of a situation, I mean, if this was a stock car race and I was in his shoes right now, I'd be pushing a little bit. I want to be putting a little bit of pressure on these leaders because the tires, they're definitely going to fall off. I've got the opportunity to really race for my lap back. But because of the nature of this circuit and because of the nature of the IndyCar as a whole, TJ's really not going to be... His best bet is just to wait for another caution. The field's been thinned out, though. We've only got 13 cars left out there on the racing surface at this point in time, which means that his chances for a caution are actually quite a significant little bit lower. But the thing is, if he overtakes these guys, he can't run away. He's stuck because of the drafting package. So even though he might be able to overtake them, he's going to be stuck still right there in front of the leaders. He's not really going to get the ability to get that full lap back. Additionally, something I'm keeping my eyes on at this point in time is Nick de Groot's pace. He's not trying to push away from the field out in front. He's not trying to drag these guys along with him. He's not trying to do anything like that. The pace isn't actually tip-top pace. Right now, he's being a little bit patient. I think he's trying to conserve a little bit of fuel, a little bit of tire, just extend their stint just a few laps. Not a mega amount. We're not looking for him to go to be the longest car in the field, but he's trying to slow this pace down. He wants to see this pack really tight. You can see that battling from Alain as he goes to the top side now.
Looking at the 27 of Craig Forsyth, who right now is in the 5th position, really outside of maybe the first few laps of this race when he started back in the, I believe it was 7th position, but very quickly made his way to the front. He's not really had to deal with his car being in traffic. Now he's back there. Had a lot of cars he had to pass to get up to where he is right now with the timing of that caution coming out in the middle of green flag pit stops. And I saw him for a brief moment there in a tight battle with Jim Brooks, and he really pushed up the racetrack off of turn 4, almost put Brooks into the outside wall. So having maybe a period of readjustment there for the driver of the 27, not having that clean air to the nose that he enjoyed for the first 50 laps or so.
Yeah, he's going to have to get that thinking cap on, I think, here for Craig Forsyth. He's going to find a way through this pack, and Elaine's making this thing a little bit difficult as well. Elaine just had to check up there. Got to run to the inside of Charles Teed. Again, lap down cut. Does not want to be involved in that. If he's involved in that, all of a sudden the whole point of being up here and attempting to race to get your lap back, it just sort of goes away if you haven't got the car once you do get that lap back. So he's going to be a little bit careful. He'll check up the whole inside lane. Forsyth's stuck within that, so he's going to sort of check back up a little bit. But yeah, it's critical. I mean, talk about DeGroot. DeGroot's led from out the front most of this race. A few other guys have had the opportunity out there, Craig Forsyth among them, and now he's had to adjust back to the air. It's difficult. You can't just get back into that air and have things work the way that you want them to.
How interesting the fact that the last and only time prior to tonight that these drivers took to Las Vegas, the top 2 highest finishers in the field here this evening are running in first and second. Nick DeGroot had the runner-up here 2 seasons ago. Eric Schaus brought it home in fourth, and right now those two kitty-corner to each other through the first couple corners of Las Vegas, battling for the race lead. Charles Teed had a great run here as well back in Season 3, finishing in the 7th position. He runs right now in 3rd place, trying to hold off Jim Brooks.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of a strategy here too. Just have a look at the line that Nick DeGroot's running. If he never leaves that white line, it is incredibly difficult to overtake him. It's like a 1 in 100 sort of chance. You've got to get the perfect draft. If anything, you kind of need to be the second car in the queue. You need to be building that momentum as you come off the corner, so you're already starting to generate that run. Then you're maintaining the draft. You're still getting a run, and you need to be level, if not have the nose fractionally ahead of going into the corner, so you can maintain the momentum around the high side. The fact that this front stretch is curved lends all of that weight and all of that overtaking ability to the inside car. Nick DeGroot going to be nearly impossible to beat without pit lane strategy.
But with that being said, if you're Eric Schaus and you're finding it very difficult to take that longer way around to get the race lead from Nick DeGroot, pit lane possibly the deciding factor, how much pressure does that put on you to not only make sure that you execute perfectly the maybe upcoming next green flag pit stop, but also make absolutely certain you don't make a mistake in trying to overachieve?
Yeah, and look, I mean, get it consistent. He's got a really, really good opportunity. He's running in that draft a lot of the time as well, so he is going to be using less fuel. We talked to Matt Wagner. 5th gear, if you want to go somewhere on this racetrack, you got to be in that 5th gear. You got to run that thing almost up to the limiter. Fractionally before you hit that limiter, that's when you got to shift to get the most out of the gear, get the most out of these cars around here. Additionally, there's a different way to go about it. Run it in 6th gear the whole time. You're going to be conserving drops of fuel every lap. Yeah, that doesn't sound like a lot until you recognize that we're doing 120 laps out here. Getting those drops of fuel, that's less fuel you got to add to the car in the pit stop. That is less time spent on pit lane. Could be an advantage.
Well, despite the fact we've been under the caution 3 times here tonight, this race has flown by. We are now into the final third. And that means that this is going to be the money stop when these drivers eventually hit pit road. They should be able to make it the rest of the way, depending on when they make that pit stop. And we saw last week at Auto Club, the timing of the pit stop really played a big factor. DeGroot was able to stay out 1 extra lap than Matt Wagner and Craig Forsyth. We heard from Wagner that obviously the Forsyth spin cost them a little bit of time as well off of pit road, but just the opportunity to take on less fuel meant less time on pit lane for Nick DeGroot. Nobody, at least at this point in time, I don't think is going to be able to play that strategy, because I think every single person, regardless of whether they come to pit road a lap earlier or a lap later than the race leader, they're probably going to have to take on a full tank of fuel. That's a tongue twister to say right there. Regardless of when they make that final pit stop, I would assume.
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways to go. If you're short on fuel right now and you have to come early, you got to add more fuel to get to the end. You've got more laps left in the race, you got to make sure you got the fuel for them. B, that may mean some amount of fuel saving in this final run to get the cars home. Keep an eye on the way that these guys up front are running at this point in time as well. Schaus is just starting to lose a little bit, and Jim Brooks is actually the guy that's come up here. Charles Teed was actually up here for a few laps, nearly attached himself to the rear end of Schaus. It's quite close to run with 2 cars at the same time in this sort of formation. What Schaus is trying to do, he's trying to pin Nick DeGroot to that bottom line. Nick DeGroot has got to add as little steering input as he possibly can to keep the car down there. Otherwise, he's scrubbing tires. That builds wear on that right front. The problem for Schaus is he's wearing tires just to try and keep him there. But if you can keep DeGroot on that bottom lane, remember what I said about minimizing the section of track that you've got to run on? That puts more wear, that put more load on the tires. The other thing is, he's running higher in the corners. He's searching for fresh air. He wants that right front as fresh as a daisy, fresh as it can possibly be. And I think Jim Brooks was saving this whole time. I think he's going to have a go.
Okay, see there as we take a look at the onboards of our current top 3 runners. Jim Brooks, 6th gear. Eric Schaus, 6th gear. And obviously with no draft in front of him, 5th gear for race leader Nick DeGroot. So Schaus and Brooks able to save a little bit of fuel there. And yeah, to your point, we saw Craig Forsyth on the last green flag pit stop just before the third caution came out. He had to be one of the first to pit lane because he did not have any draft to be able to save any fuel, so DeGroot undoubtedly is going to have to be the first one to spearhead when this next round, this potentially final round of green flag pit stops takes place.
And we're in the window. Any time now, he's going to have to come to pit road. The instant, I reckon, what's going to happen, he's going to run these tires until they're worn. Until he has to lift in the corners. The instant he starts to feel those tires go, straight to pit road. The other guys, right now, he's just said he's coming. He's coming this lap. He's coming this lap. So A, I think he's out of fuel. B, those tires are right on the limit. Schaus is coming with him. Keep your eyes on Jim Brooks. This needs to be a mammoth lap for Jim Brooks. He needs to get a huge deal of momentum off this corner, make a heap of time. He's got a big opportunity. This race is won and lost this lap.
We had a couple of drivers hit pit road the lap before as well, AJ Hobson and Luis Gonzalez Nunez. Now, I believe for Gonzalez, that was a regularly scheduled stop for him. Hobson had to come to pit road a little bit earlier because, remember, he and a couple of other drivers took the wave around under the last yellow flag, so they were about 2 or 3 laps more...
Hobson's short. I'm just looking at his
fuel.
numbers. Hobson's short. Hobson's going to have to come back to pit road. When he does that, if he gets a caution, he gets just a free go at things. And additionally, it's difficult. If another caution comes out, I'm in Nick DeGroot's shoes, I'm not coming back to pit road. Why? I've had fresh air the whole time. My tires are clean. I don't need it. Oh, have a look at the runoff of pit lane. Peterson got a huge jump.
And he's going to be within half a second of Nick DeGroot as Charles Teed stays out an extra lap. Forsyth going to come down pit lane. Jim Brooks and Joseph Morales, we saw them pitting the lap before. Brooks is already down and away in the 51. And yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see where everybody is going to be in relation to each other now as opposed to when the pit stops began. Is time going to be gained? Is time going to be lost? Look at
Jim Brooks. Keep your eye on Jim Brooks. Jim Brooks is actually out and clear of Nick DeGroot. I said he might have been fuel saving. He might have been tire saving. I'm wondering whether or not he didn't take tires at that stop. I'm not sure. I can't tell you right now.
And
no, the stop was identical. He's taking tires.
It looks like possibly Craig Forsyth is going to get out ahead of Jim Brooks. So Forsyth might end up being the race leader when everything cycles around. Yeah, Forsyth right now coming out of turn 4. Brooks was entering into turn 3. So depending on what happens here with Gale Brooks and Charles Teed, who were first and second coming down pit lane the last lap, it'll be interesting to see if indeed the 27 cycles around at the top position. There's Teed, there's Brooks. They're not up to speed yet. Here comes the 27.
Yeah, and this is critical because right now Jim Brooks wants to get a huge draft off the back of Charles Teed. He'll go to the high side with all the momentum. He's trying to clear him, and this may actually work back into his favor. Charles Teed might be the deciding factor. I'm keeping my eye on Schaus as well. Schaus and Peterson, they need to work together. I don't think they are. They need to slingshot each other to drag each other back up to the pocket. High Song's now filling in the middle of Nick DeGroot. And you know what? Nick DeGroot's gone from leading this race, having total control, to being mega fuel compromised.
Absolutely. Right now in the 5th position is Nick DeGroot behind Teed, Jim Brooks, Gale Brooks, and race leader now Craig Forsyth. As a matter of fact, there's another pass on Nick DeGroot. That's Jeff Hysong going around. All the drivers that are going by the 89 are anywhere from 2 to 3 laps better on fuel than he is. To your point, he's having to save quite a bit. And how about Gale Brooks? We kind of felt last season that Gale Brooks was so close to flying victory lane for the first time in his Dark Horse Racing Series career. Could tonight be the night? Had a top 5 run last week in the season opener. Could be in for 2 huge points days in the first 2 races of the season.
So there's a difficult draft strategy to pull off right now. Nick DeGroot come on the radio, said to Jeff Hysong, hey, we're not attached to this pack. We need to be attached to this pack. You know what they're doing? They're draft cycling. It's a move called slingshotting. The guy gets into the draft of the guy ahead. He gets a huge boost in terms of his maximum speed along the straight because somebody's punching. Then the driver that's ahead pulls out of the way. That means that the driver that's behind, he gets to maintain all of that momentum, gets into the next corner. The guy slots back in behind. Now he gets that path. It's fractionally quicker. If you're ever gonna be able to catch a pack, this is how you do it in IndyCar. It's not bump drafting. It's not being connected. It's actually cycling. Who's got the pace? That's the only way to do it. These guys, they're in a critical position of the race. They're trying to get back on the lead pack. Only way they're going to get there is if they manage this perfectly.
They talk about DeGroot and Jeff Heisong trying to do that. Now you add in Eric Peterson and Eric Schaus, making it a group of 4. Just how much more difficult is it to be able to do the maneuvers you're talking about when you've got more cars here in the pack with you?
This takes responsibility from all the drivers that are in and around these guys. You see that Schaus is there, but he's not electing to take it over. Right now, he's going to get pulled along no matter what happens by the 2 drivers that are actually ahead of him. He wants these guys to do this.
Like
so what they're talking to each other right now. They're just trying to figure out what the best way to go about it is. They're making slight corrections to the strategy. So this is not a hard and fast set thing. These guys are working on this, improving it lap by lap by lap, because they need to get up to this lead pack.
Right now, Eric Peterson, the lead car of that second group, running about 1.2, 1.3 seconds off the back bump of the last car in this lead pack, Jim Brooks. Yeah, it's minimal, but they are indeed reeling in this lead group, and they've still got the laps to be able to work with as well. 19 laps to go just went up on the board there for race leader Craig Forsyth, and Forsyth's got some hungry drivers behind him. Gale Brooks, Charles Teed, Jim Brooks. For Gale and Jim, they're looking for their first win of their career. Charles Teed looking for his first victory since Iowa back in Season 3. And, mention the fact that we're going to New Hampshire next week. Who'll ever forget last year at New Hampshire where we thought Jim Brooks might be en route to the victory. Contact between himself and Robert Maleska III for that race win. Jim Brooks might be able to get some New Hampshire redemption before we go back to that venue next week.
Yeah, and here it comes. Here comes the draft pack. They're making up approximately 1/10 per lap. The thing that's really helping them is that this lead pack is... there's contact in the lead pack! Brooks is done. Brooks is done. He'll have front wing damage. He's lost momentum. He's down on the apron. He's got to rejoin safely. This screws that whole pack over because they lose momentum. Now they've got a car in the interim. Now the whole pack behind gets a huge tow, pulls them all the way back up. And you know who's sitting in the driver's in probably the catbird seat right now? It's actually Jeff Heisong. He's backed off of this pack. He's saving tires.
Jeff Heisong, of course, had damage getting into the back of Brewpacker that brought out our third caution of the evening. So nice comeback for him. Might be able to translate the hardship early on, potentially into a victory here tonight at Las Vegas. There is Gale Brooks falling back into the clutches of this second group. Nick DeGroot going to jump to the outside. Well, maybe not. Gale Brooks going to try and pick them up, but to your point, having that front end damage on the wing is really going to hurt that car as a lead car to get this second group back up to the top trio.
Yeah, so there's a big issue there for Gale Brooks if he does have damage. Now, conveniently, if it's left-hand end of the front wing, it's only going to be air pocket that's going to be the big issue for him because the left front tire doesn't do a lot of the work. The loaded tire, when you turn into a corner, the G-forces, the centrifugal forces push the load onto the outside tire. Whenever you turn into a corner in your road car, you feel that weight transition. That's exactly what we're talking about. Now, if it's on the left-hand front, that tire's not doing too much work. He's not going to lose a whole bunch of grip. If it was the right front, I'd be mega concerned. Right now, it doesn't look like there was a huge deal of damage. He's going to be okay. He's still in this race. We've got 13 laps to go this time by the stripe, Seth.
Fifth gear you can see there on the steering wheel panel for Charles Teed. That means he is in attack mode, trying to get around the outside of Craig Forsyth. It looks like he's got Jim Brooks there to offer him the draft on the straightaways. They just can't link up enough to carry that speed through the corner. There you see about a half car length lost Teed to Forsyth.
Yeah, and there's a couple of critical things. Remember what I was talking, these guys wanted to go as far as they possibly could on fuel on that last stint to make sure they had to add less fuel to get to the end of the race. Well, there was another critical factor that, remember I said this is going to be a tire race. The tires are going to fall off at the end of this thing. The longer you go on that first stint before you had to come to the lane, the better your tires later on.
EJ Lane will not reach the conclusion of this race. He came down pit road a couple of laps ago, and he will finish in the 12th position. Joseph Morales in the 60. Looks like he got hit with a speeding penalty on that last round of green flag pit stop, so he is currently the only car one lap down in the 11th position. 10 drivers on the lead lap.
Oh, here comes DeGroot.
7 drivers up in this lead group, and Nick DeGroot, high, wide, and handsome's gone from 4th to 3rd, now looking for 2nd into turn 1.
Yeah, he's looking to make some moves. Now, remember, he's got the championship lead, and he's got it by a fair way. Wagner's out of this thing. This is now him making sure he can pick up maximum points here tonight. Huge run to the top side. Now, Brooks will get another attack on the underside of him. There's millimeters. There is 16ths of an inch to play with and nearly makes contact with Teed.
But I'll tell you what there isn't to play with, and that's that apron on the front straightaway. Normally, in stock cars, you can go down there and make passes. The white line is out of bounds for these drivers, and so if you're going to fake somebody up high and then try and dart to the inside of them, you got to make sure you keep those left side Firestones on the right side of that white line to avoid a penalty. That's why Nick DeGroot not able to quite be able to make an aggressive crossover on Teed. Teed trying to get back to Forsyth, who's just watching for these laps to tick away. One less lap each time for him to have to defend the mayhem behind him.
Now, Nick DeGroot is one of the best IndyCar drivers you will ever come across. There's only a couple that are in that sort of class. Henry Bennett's another one of them. Rick Ravon's another one of these guys. Craig Forsyth, Matt Wagner. Very, very experienced heads. They know what they need to do. Have a look on that last lap. Not the lap we've just completed, the one before that one. Nick DeGroot went all the way to the top of the racetrack, backed himself up, additionally held on to a whole bunch of momentum. Then he tucked down in behind the draft. He got a huge draft pocket. Then he closed up, but he had to take the run to the top side because he couldn't get to the low side. There was cars down there. Now look for it where it goes.
And you've got Forsyth continuing to
Here
run.
it comes!
Look at DeGroot! Crosses the inside of Teed to the top side of Forsyth. You know, Dale Jr. calls it C in the air. I think that's what DeGroot's able to do. Teed! Little wide off of 2, he's into the wall, keeps it straight, no caution.
Oh, no, there'll be a caution! There'll be a caution! It was the last car in the queue that got him.
That would have probably been Gale Brooks, I believe, in the 71.
He was a little bit blindsided. Yeah, he just didn't quite have the vision that he needed to spot. He knew that there was a slow car up high. He knew there was something going on there. He thought it was going to stay up there. He thought he'd have enough room. He just didn't read the situation correctly, and unfortunately that's it. Tell you what though, Seth, I think we got a one-lap shootout.
I think we do too. 4.5 laps to go right now with them on the Nellis Straight. I think that we are indeed going to be able to get back green at some point here. They don't do overtime. They run the scheduled laps, but I think we're going to get ourselves a 1.5-mile shootout. Let's go back and take a look at what happened there. Tremendous job by Charles Teed.
He tried everything.
He tried, you're right, to keep his car out of the way and try and have this thing finish under green flag conditions. But, you know, you mentioned about it, the tires, I think maybe that right front just started.
Oh, Schaus.
Didn't want to turn.
Schaus got baited. Eric Schaus is coming to pit road. He's going to get some fresh Firestones. That's critical. Now, in terms of Charles Teed, yeah, look, I mean, the guy has tried everything. And at the end of the day, as soon as you know that you're bidding it, the best possible thing that you can do is make sure you're not taking anybody else with you. He's tried everything. Gael's just read that one wrong, unfortunately. And that happens from time to time. That's just racing as well. You think that there's going to be a gap that's going to be there, and by the time you get there, the gap's gone. There's nothing you can do about that. In this case, you think that there's something happening, you can't quite read where it is. He's read that, oh yeah, the car's going to be coming down, I'm going to be trying to stay up high, you know, he ultimately, he's made a decision, he's backed himself in, and it was the wrong decision. That happens. That's life. That's racing. There's nothing you can really do about that. Now, Nick DeGroot is the guy that has a huge opportunity here. He wants to back this restart up. He wants to be a reasonable distance between him and Craig Forsyth on this restart. Why? He wants Forsyth to punch that hole in the air. Remember what we were talking about. He was backing up the run. He was trying to get himself enough momentum to go around the high side previously. Very difficult to do when these cars are at max speed. Forsyth just leaves it in 5th gear. Nothing you can really do about that. Tire wear. Gonna come into this one, Seth. How green are their tires? How much rubber have they got left? You got to remember, Forsyth has been battling with a whole host of different cars. He's been defending from multiple different cars. They've all thrown little bits of rubber at him, and have all come off second best. You can't defend everyone. Critically, now, DeGroot's got a huge opportunity. He's got fresh rubber. He hasn't fought anyone. He has got an opportunity to punch a huge hole in the air thanks to Craig Forsyth. This is going to be epic.
If you think about Craig Forsyth as well, running that extreme inside line, left side tires out down that white line. Yes, it's the shorter way around the racetrack. You're forcing everybody to go the longer way around, but it's going to cause more heat in those tires as well, making a harder turn to be able to make the shorter way around in the corners. So with that being said, could put him at a disadvantage in terms of the grip that he'll deal with here as well. But the thing I'm wondering here with Nick DeGroot, Forsyth's going to be the control car. He's going to get to choose where the acceleration point is. Is one lap enough time for Nick DeGroot to be able to generate a run?
Yes, on the restarts only. On the restarts only. That second lap is when you can't overtake. DeGroot, I saw him a lot yesterday in the IR18 making moves on that initial restart lap. He is very, very strong on restarts. And if you actually listen to those engines right now, every one of these drivers has excess fuel in the tank. They were fueled up to make 5 extra green flag laps. Now they're going to burn that off.
We should see the lights go out atop the iRacing pace car this time, giving us the indication it'll be 1 to green and a 1-lap shootout to decide tonight in the Troy Lee Designs 180 at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Joseph Morales got the lucky dog under this yellow flag. All 11 drivers will be on the lead lap for this upcoming final 1.5 miles. It's Forsyth the leader, DeGroot in second, Jim Brooks lines up third, Eric Peterson fourth, fifth place is Gale Brooks, and I'll tell you what, we've seen some contact up here for the race lead already tonight. If I'm Brooks, Peterson, Hysong, Gale Brooks, Nunez, I'm not giving up hope just yet because there's every possibility these top 2 could find themselves binned before we get back to the checkered flag.
Honestly, Nick DeGroot, Craig Forsyth, these drivers are good enough. It won't happen between them. They are definitely good enough. It's going to be in the mid-pack. Remember, we just had 2 drivers from the lead lap take it to pit lane, plus our lucky dog contender. He was already going to be at the rear of the field. When you're in that position, you always come down for fresh rubber. You're not losing anything at all, and you're only gaining. Best representation of that is Max Verstappen versus Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton loses everything by pitting. Then all of a sudden, caution doesn't come back in. He loses the World Championship. Max Verstappen takes it. Max Verstappen, he's never going to lose a spot by pitting under that caution period. It's the same sort of thing here. So keep your eyes on Schaus, Teed, and Morales to flyer their way through the field. They've got 1 lap. Let's see what they can do.
Well, Craig Forsyth led 62 of the 120 laps last week at Auto Club, was not able to pick up the victory due to a spin off of pit road. Can he get the checkered flag 1 week later? And there's a stack up behind. Schaus has been turned by Charles Teed. We've taken the white, though. I believe we're going to be racing back to the checkered. I don't see a caution in the air.
Yeah, and that's cars right at the tail end. We've got our eyes all the way up here. It's going to be Jim Brooks, and it's going to be Eric Peterson. I think that's going to be the biggest fight. Craig Forsyth got a huge run on these guys. Has DeGroot got anything for him at the line?
Season 2 Indianapolis 500. Last
gonna run.
Forsyth. DeGroot jumps to the top. Drag race photo finish, and maybe by a wing. Craig Forsyth is going to win this race 8/1000ths of a second.
Who grabs third? It's Jim Brooks. Jim Brooks, a return to the podium. A return to form for Jim Brooks. He's had a lot of bad luck of recent note, a lot of bad luck through the mid and latter stages of last season. He brings it home on the podium once again. That's a great run for Jim Brooks.
Craig Forsyth getting a little bit of redemption from last week, a race that it looked like he might be standing in victory lane at Auto Club. 1 week later here at Las Vegas, though, he's going to get to burn up those Firestones at the start-finish line. The winner of the Troy Lee Designs 180, but you talked about him defending here tonight. He had to really defend there off of turn 4 and coming back to the start-finish line, coming to that checkered flag. DeGroot, his bid for 2 in a row, so close.
Yeah, look, and ultimately, it is inches. You give them another, let's say, 3-4 feet, in a straight racetrack. The critical factor there is it's curved racetrack. The distance, it matters so much. If that piece of racetrack is safe, straight, Craig Forsyth is a sitting duck. And I'll tell you what, there is one guy in the field that's going to feel real hard done by. It's Matt Wagner. Remember what happened to him in the first 10 laps of this motor race, and the guy that he gets into a little bit of bad luck with ends up going on to win this one.
Craig Forsyth came into this race in the 9th position in the point standings, so not double points here tonight, but certainly early on in the season that he will move up quite a number of positions in the stands as we continue to look at camera angles here coming to the start finish line, showing just how close this was in real time. And what do you think? Maybe another half foot, maybe another foot, and Nick DeGroot gets this victory? Because he had the momentum.
Oh, look. He did. One of the biggest things for Nick DeGroot was that he straightened the car out. The problem is, right, in order to maintain momentum, you have to straighten the car out. If you're scrubbing tires, that's scrubbing momentum off. A lot of your momentum is actually going into the heat transfer into the tires and the abrasion directly across the circuit instead of actually keeping you going forward. So he has a little bit of a bobble as well, trying to follow Craig down. And that could be a factor. There's nothing in it. And like I said, I mean, he needs one lap. The instant this goes 2 laps, Forsyth just defends the bottom. You cannot make that work around the outside on the second lap. Forsyth's got everything in his favor. So that ultimately DeGroot did everything impossibly in his power, and Forsyth just if he loses that amount of space, that wingtip on the initial get-go, DeGroot gets him.
Well, certainly going to be still a good points day for Nick DeGroot. A win to start the season, a second place in the second race of the season, as he's going to come just short to Craig Forsyth. You mentioned Jim Brooks. Nice to see him back there on the podium in a third place performance. Eric Peterson bringing it home in fourth. Gail Brooks finishing it out in the fifth position. Jeff Hysong had his issues here tonight. He'll still get sixth. Luis Gonzalez Nunez, after his podium finish last week, solid run of seventh. AJ Hobson in eighth, and Eric Schaus was the last driver to finish on the lead lap. He limped his machine back to the start-finish line after he and Charles Teed got together in a stack-up on that final restart. Joseph Morales going to finish a lap down in the 10th position. There is Teed finishing in 11th, and then the drivers that did not make it to the conclusion of this race, TJ Elaine, Yari Brupacher, Jimmy Drine, and Gary Corley. And as we've talked tonight, the big one, Matt Wagner, 16th place here this evening. He'll look to get back on the comeback trail when we go to New Hampshire next week. But let's see if we can talk with some of our podium finishers here tonight. And how about we kick things off with tonight's third place finisher, Jim Brooks. Jim, Scott and Seth up here in the upper end booth. You got us?
I do.
Oh man, a great run for you here this evening. We kind of saw this Las Vegas race take a couple of shapes in terms of the landscape. It was looking like we were more than likely going to see a fuel strategy race up to the close of it, and then all of a sudden, late race caution comes out, and all you guys have to get ready for a shootout. You had a pretty good front row seat of the battle before and after that caution. What little more do you think you might have had to be able to get up there and make it a three-man fight for this checkered flag?
Yeah, probably not too much with Craig and Nick. You know, that's two of the best. They're pretty hard to take anywhere, and yeah, it was a fun race. There were some options there until caution came out, but overall, it was a lot of fun racing here.
Look, I mean, Seth and I were just talking about things. Strong memories going to New Hampshire next week of what a battle it was coming into the final lap with Robert Maloska last season in the GW12 League. Do you think it's time for some redemption this time around? You played things to perfection last season. Can it work your way again?
I had forgot about that. Thanks. Yeah, hopefully I like the track, and you know, there's different people around now, so hope things will go well. But it's usually a fun race, and look forward to that.
Yeah, Jim, obviously a good start to the season for you. 7th in the season opener, and now 3rd place here tonight. Obviously, we mentioned last week about a lot of names, a lot of former champions not in the field here this season. Given an opportunity for drivers like yourself now to be able to be to the forefront of the TV screens and maybe be able to pick up some victories, maybe be right there in the thick of it for the championship. So, you know, how does that change the landscape for you and change the mindset here for the remainder of the schedule? Knowing that, you know, some of those guys that we saw up there inside the podium week after week, they're not here now.
Yeah, it certainly doesn't hurt, but the big thing is not getting in trouble, especially early on, and I think that kind of happened to me in this and Area 51 last season. The first 2 races end up behind the 8 ball, and then it's almost impossible to get back where you need to be. So yeah, it's always good to start out at least strongish, and then, you know, try to carry it from there.
Absolutely. Well, a great performance for you here tonight. Kept out of trouble. Bring it home with the nose clean in the third position. Congratulations on that. And now we turn the mic over to you for some thank you sponsors and shout-outs.
Yeah, I want to thank you guys for covering it, and obviously Dark Horse for all their effort. And then a shameless plug for Area 51 Racing, sponsored by TJ Chummy Esports. And hope to see you and hear you guys soon.
That's Jim Brooks. He's going to finish third place here tonight in the Troy Lee Designs 180 at Las Vegas. Congratulations once again on the great run there, Jim, and best of luck next week in New Hampshire.
Thanks, guys.
All right, let's see if we can dial up tonight's runner-up finisher, Nick DeGroot. Hey, Nick, Scott and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Yep, I gotcha.
Oh, man, we talked about the fact that Las Vegas, second time it's been on the Dark Horse Racing schedule. You came up just short back in Season 3, 69 one-thousandths of a second to Maleska the third. Tonight, just a tick closer, 8 one-thousandths of a second to Craig Forsyth. But, man, I mean, kind of catching fire here early on with the win last week and the runner-up finish here tonight. What little more do you need there on that front straightaway? Make sure your wing was going to be the first one to the checkered flag.
Yeah, I think it all comes down to that restart because I didn't want to react to Craig. I wanted to go a split second later so I could get that big run through turn 3. And it looks like I waited just that hair too long because, we came up 8 1,000 short. So, yeah, I just needed to time my restart just that much better. But we're talking like not even a tenth, like hundredths here that it needed to be better. And that would have been the difference. So it's such fine margins with pack races like this. But yeah, all in all, great points day for us. We were able to stay out of trouble. 0x, got the pole. I think we led the most laps. And yeah, it's a shame we couldn't sweep Las Vegas with the Area 51 win yesterday. But yeah, good for Craig. He needed that after last week because I think he had that one in the bag before the pit stop.
You know, we saw a couple of things really play their part into the outcome of this race. One was the timing of the caution, especially that one in the middle of green flag pit stops kind of shuffled up the strategy a bit, but then also that final green flag pit stop, we saw you come in as the race leader, everything cycled around, you were a couple laps shorter on fuel than everybody else and back in the 5th position. So, you know, what did you have to do? What kind of mindset did you have to get into to be able to cut your way back through the traffic and get back up there, at least into the battle for the race lead?
Yeah, that first one that happened in the middle of green flag pit stops, we got really lucky there because we exited the pit lane just as Teed and the other leaders are coming around to lap us. So if we were just another second or two in the pits, we would have been a lap down and would have had to come back around and get the wave around. And that would put us like 8th or whatever, and probably could have made that back. But instead, we got to restart in the lead, which was just perfect for us. But yeah, then I kind of botched that last pit stop. I was way too conservative entering pit road, which hurt Schaus as well and the others that were pitting with us. I was way too cautious, and when we came out, I'm like, okay, we're gonna be behind like Brooks, and then I see Craig come out and these other cars, and I'm like, okay, no, we're gonna be like 5th or 6th. This ain't good. We better start swapping. And thankfully the swap is very powerful here. It was like a bunch of little tandems you saw with Brooks and Teed and Craig and whoever he was with up there, and us with myself and Peterson and Brooks and Schaus, and just swapping and getting back up there and making a race out of it. So it's nice to be able to make it up. It's really annoying at racetracks with this car because the gap for the draft is like 6/10, and once you fall out of that, it's like you put your hands up and say it's over. But here you can actually do something about it. You can use that swap draft and actually make up the gap, which is really nice, and brought us all back together for what was a hell of a one-lap shootout.
Now, you talk about the ability to be able to utilize the swapping back and forth to get up to the front. And for those that aren't used to open wheel racing, you know, they obviously are used to where stock cars are able to lock bumpers and draft their way up to a group that they're trying to catch. Scott very eloquently was explaining, you know, what the drivers have to do to be able to time the swaps, to be able to continue the momentum. But how difficult is it as a driver? Because at one point there, he was talking about the fact that you and Haisong were communicating about doing that swap together. And then all of a sudden you add in Eric Peterson and Eric Schaus into the mix and you double your numbers. How difficult is it to kind of do a little bit of traffic control, if you will, of who does the swap with who when you've got that many drivers in a pack?
Yeah, I think I swapped with like 3-4 different cars that last run catching the lead pack, and I was just getting on the radio, and for me it was whoever was near me, whoever was in front of me. I didn't want to have to slow down and kind of readjust our little pack. If Brooks was in front of me, then I'm swapping with him. If Peterson's there, I'm swapping with him. And when we started to catch Brooks, I was going to just let him and Peterson swap, but it was taking Peterson a lap or two to get up close to Brooks, so I just kind of sent it under him, and started doing it myself. But yeah, it's real tricky to time right too, because the draft is so powerful. You don't want to do it too early. You don't want to do it too late and then go side by side in the corner. And you just gotta get it just right. And once you do, it just gains such a margin. We gained, what was it, 3 seconds?
Well, we're able to battle back up there to the front. Almost pulled it off there on that one-lap shootout, but still a great run for you here tonight. Second place. You'll keep the points lead going into New Hampshire, a track that the last time we were there, you brought home inside the top 5 in 5th. So best of luck to see if you can keep the momentum up here this season. Now we're going to turn the mic over to you for some thank you sponsors and shout-outs.
Yeah, as always, thank you to Factor Back Motorsports, CovyMoore.com, Motorsport.com, Blaze Pods, Wegmans, DeGroot, Automotive U-Haul, and Detailing, Cowboy Shit. And yeah, I'm the only one on the track for us this season, so I'm trying to do us proud. And so far, we got 1 win and a 1 runner-up in the points lead. So if we can keep that up, we're in good shape for the championship.
Yeah, so far running a 100% success rate of being on the podium. We'll see if we can keep it up next week at New Hampshire. But for now, congrats on a great run there, Nick. Go and enjoy it, and maybe we'll talk to you next week, maybe in Victory Lane once again.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
All right, let's go down to Victory Lane, and first time here this season, first time since all the way back, season finale, Indianapolis 500 of Season 2. Craig Forsyth is in the Dark Horse Racing Series Victory Lane. Hey, Craig, Scott and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Got you guys.
Oh, man, I'll tell you what. Dogfight here tonight from start to finish. You had to do a lot of defending there, especially on that final lap. At any point there, coming out of turn 4 with the 89 alongside you, did you think, he's going to get me, I'm going to lose this thing?
I was looking desperately for the start-finish line because he was charging with a massive head of steam. He had a good run. I think we agreed that, yeah, I just started that run a little too late. But, yeah, I think if he'd had another 50 feet, he probably would have been right past me.
You know,
I don't even think there was that much in it. I mean, it was close, but let's talk about the race as a whole, Craig. How did you get to pit lane and come that far out ahead of everyone? That pit stop was on point.
I thought I was going to get nailed for speeding. I came in so quickly. So yeah, I got lucky there that I was able to slow it down. I knew that the guys, the 2 laps before when they'd come in, I'd heard that there had been like some sort of a kerfuffle. So at that point, instead of going just 1 lap and right in after them, it was keep it on the floor, go until I was out of fuel, which was 1 extra lap, and just make sure that like I could put any distance I could on them. And then I'd known from the pit stop before when I'd come out. I think it was Luis had come out ahead of me, or when I'd come out, and then the lap after that he'd come out, and he'd come out onto the back straight ahead of me, and I'd been able to draft up behind him and just slingshot right past him. And I did I was able to do the exact same thing to Gael, and then get the lead from there. And then the draft package is so massive here that I knew it was only a matter of time before even though the pack was split up, that the guys were going to catch back up to us. So hold on to the bottom and make sure that I didn't let anyone get the nose underneath me.
You know, Craig, obviously we talked about last week leading the most laps in that Auto Club race, the pit road miscue in the closing stages costing you that victory. So did that in any way kind of give you a little bit more motivation into tonight to kind of get some redemption from what happened last week?
I have no memory. Did we race last week? I don't remember. It was the culmination. It was a bad week last week. I had a whole bunch of bad races in a row, and every mistake was on me 100%. So it's coming around better. I mean, the net code this week has been bad, which is unfortunate because all the races seem to be at Vegas, and it's been bad net code in fixed races. It's been bad net code in our league race last night. And I mean, Matt was a whole car width above me. and somehow we net coded together, and it took him out, which is unfortunate because it's the exact same thing that happened to us last night.
Well, it's been a long time since we've been able to talk to you in Victory Lane, Craig, going all the way back to the Indy 500 in Season 2. So great to see you back in Victory Lane here tonight. Congratulations. And now we're going to turn the mic over to you for some Victory Lane thank you, sponsors, and shout-outs.
No, I've got to thank the guys over at LMC Gear, good sponsors, sponsor the car, good sponsor for the league, and everyone over at Dark Horse. I mean, this is a good bunch of guys. They put on good racing. It shows in the product that we put on. It'd be good to get some more numbers. Anyone looking for Wednesday night league racing in the IndyCar? This is tight, fast racing among guys that like doing it. So come join us.
That's Craig Forsyth. He's your winner here tonight in the Troy Lee Designs 180 at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Congratulations on the victory, Craig. Go enjoy it, and best of luck next week at the Magic Mile of New Hampshire.
You betcha. Stay safe.
And so as Craig continues to celebrate down there in Victory Lane, kind of interesting here, I was looking over the last full-time season that Craig Forsyth took part in. That was back in Season 2 when he won the Indy 500. He finished runner-up that season to the eventual champion Nick DeGroot, and Jim Brooks finished third in the point standings. That's your podium finishers here tonight, first, second, and third with Forsyth, DeGroot, and Jim Brooks. We know for certain that Matt Wagner, the luck's going to turn back around for him, may start as soon as next week at New Hampshire, as he had, of course, the runner-up finish at Auto Club, so he'll drop in the point standings, but maybe not by that much, but you just kind of get the feeling right now. We've had 4 seasons, 4 different champions, and I'm starting to see a lot of faces up there towards the top of the point stands that might make it a bit of 5 for 5.
Seth, can you put the crystal ball away? You're freaking me out again.
I'm sorry.
Man.
I know it's 2 races in. I've already brought it out, but it's a bad habit.
Well, we haven't made a milkshake reference this stream. I think we're doing things wrong. I think our fans are a little bit disappointed. That race, it finished like a good milkshake. I mean, all the flavor in it was there right the way through, but right at the bottom, right at the very end of it, there was that something little extra. That's something a little bit special. You sort of put it down, you forget that you had a milkshake there for a little bit, and then you're like, oh, wait, I've left the best part.
Hey, that last part of the milkshake where you hear like that very depressing sound at the bottom of the cup? That's what Nick DeGroot heard when he saw 8 1,000ths of a second be the difference between himself and Craig Forsyth there. But man, I'll tell you what, next week, New Hampshire. We already talked about the fact that, last year we thought it was going to be Jim Brooks' race to win and the contact between himself and Robert Maleska III. It's another track that has not been frequented on a Dark Horse Racing schedule. It's only going to be the second time we've gone to the Magic Mile in the history of this series. And there were a lot of drivers that, I don't want to say overperformed there last season, but certainly were some names that we didn't expect to see up there inside of the top 5 in the podium in the closing stage of that race. So do we see the same thing next week?
Well, is this the part where you sit down and go, oh yeah, we probably don't expect Matt Wagner to be on the podium there. Maybe that'll help his luck. We'll get rid of the commentator's curse.
The commentator's curse, yeah. Reverse psychology.
But now that we've mentioned it, he'll have a bad race anyway. So, we've effectively just cursed him and doomed him. Yeah, look, I mean, it is a difficult race course. It does actually promote good racing. You've got to be perfect on the timing. You've got to be patient. You've got to be very wary of what you're trying to do with the car. And there's a few guys in this league that, Craig Forsyth said, if you're looking for a good racing series, particularly in the DW12, I mean, this is the place to do it. But if you're looking for another one, if you're going to come and race in the Wednesday league, why not come race in the Tuesday league as well? Because the benefit is, I think, I'm reasonably sure it's literally the same schedule for both leagues, because next week they're going to New Hampshire as well. It'll make for a great precursor race. Who knows what will happen?
Should be a good one, as race number 3 from New Hampshire is going to be airing here on the Flat Out Racing Network next Wednesday night. Green flag scheduled to fly at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Should be a good one, as so far this season, Nick DeGroot, the winner at Auto Club. Tonight at Las Vegas, it's Craig Forsyth picking up the victory. Will we see potentially a third different winner next week when we get to the Northeast United States? Scott, it's been a good one here tonight. Great to have you back in the booth, and appreciate you joining me here tonight.
Look, I mean, when you're locked down at home, when the whole of Australia is going a little bit batty with COVID at this point in time, and nothing else that I really want to do with my Thursday morning, Wednesday night for you guys.
Well, thanks to everybody as well for tuning into our coverage here this evening. Hope that you guys enjoyed it. Again, be sure to join us next Wednesday night as we continue on the schedule for the 5th season of the Dark Horse Racing Series presented by Troy Lee Designs. I'm Seth Cole for Scott Rankin, who's probably going to go drink a milkshake shoey now. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your Wednesday evening as you've been watching another broadcast courtesy of the Flat Out Racing Network.
This broadcast is the copyrighted work of Flat Out Racing Network and may not be rebroadcast, retranslated, or used in any form without the express written consent of Flat Out Racing Network and iRacing.com Motorsports Simulations. Flat Out Racing Network would like to thank you for your support, and we hope you enjoyed tonight's broadcast.